when you realize that mainstream media has sold you a box of rocks. It's time to tune into the Kate Daly Show, America's newest addiction. The show starts now.
This is the story of a robot called Aladdin. It's Wall Street's best kept secret, and it's gobbling up every asset class across every industry. Aladdin now controls $21 trillion of our global economy. To put that in perspective, that's more than the $20 trillion GDP of the US or the $15 trillion GDP of the entire European Union. The New Statesman wrote, the total physical cash of all 7 billion people and every company, bank vault, wallet, and piggy bank in the world is around $5 trillion. Aladdin has grown into a system responsible for more than 4 times the value of all the money in the world. This one robot directs the actions of the US Federal Reserve, almost every major bank and investment fund on Wall Street, and over 17,000 traders. It controls half of all ETFs, 17% of the bond market, 10% of the global stock market, and carries out 250,000 trades every day and billions of forecasts every week. Year after year, it hoovers up trillions of data points on every market, every company, every asset, and now even each of us, what we buy, sell, and say, so that it knows what to buy and what to sell far better than any human being. Every major bank, company, and investment fund has come to rely on Aladdin and its all-powerful AI and algorithms to beat the market. And if they didn't, they've collapsed and failed in Aladdin's wake. And you know what the craziest part of this story is? This robot is just getting started.
The CIA has meddled in elections all over the world and overthrown governments all over the world. And our elections have always pretty much been fake since they've been around, So this election is no different. I know that people like the whole idea of we need the political savior to come save us. Let's get the right guy in the White House. What a mess our whole country is. We need to get the right guy in the White House. The guy in the White House is always a front for the bankers.
Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year. They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb. Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade. Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years. Once Saddam has nuclear weapons.
If you look at the history, you'll find out that Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel.
This is a short-term disruption for the long-term gain.
Short-term pain for the long-term gain.
Short-term pain be for long-term gain.
We're going to have some short-term pain.
Here at the Kate Daly Show, just a reminder that we don't have to go to war just because BlackRock and Raytheon say so. The show starts now.
All right. How are you guys? You guys good? All right. Loaded show. Lots of info coming at you. Lots of things to think about today. Okay. New information. Not the same old information. New information. And Dr. Avery Jackson will actually join me on Thursday. He was going to join me today, but I want more time with him. He's going to join me on Thursday. And I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you. Thanks for listening. It means that I would say that you're pretty awake to what's happening. And we're going to make you more awake, or I'm going to today, because that's really the goal, isn't it? I mean, come on. We need to figure out what the hell. The show should be called What the Hell? Okay. So there's a lot to talk about, from data centers, like a bigger question about data centers than I've asked before, and also flock cameras. And Dolly Parton died at 80 years old. Interesting. Wow. I really liked her music. I thought she was a good songwriter. And she's dead at 80 years old. There is information on the Ballroom, some interesting things that maybe it's a decoy. I'm just saying, if you look in history, could be a decoy for something else. I'll get to that. Data centers are they're a big deal, but I want to talk about why they're a big deal and how they're being kind of co-opted, but also a bigger question. And then, of course, oh my gosh, there were so many things. A better way to deal with flock cameras. And of course, Canada. So Canada threatening to cut America's electricity, and the renaming of Lake Ontario is a threat by Trump. So and today I'm going to talk about why the demonization of Israel combined with America is heating up. So this will be good. This will be good today. I got a lot of info for you, so we got to digest. Okay, so on the flock cameras, I just want to notice, in my community of Southern Utah, there were a couple of people arrested for destroying a flock camera. Okay, kind of younger guys. A better way of going about that would be to sue rather than destroy the cameras, because destroying the cameras is just going to fall on the people. It's not going to do anything. But if you take them to court, like Jose Rodriguez did in Washington, he was suing, I think, 53 cities, and for the information they were collecting without due process, obviously. The problem was that it didn't actually end the flock camera situation, but 13 cities got enough pressure through this lawsuit that 13 of the 53 actually canceled their flock contracts. But that doesn't mean that they're not still picking up info. So just so you guys know, I mean, when I'm looking at this situation, they're putting it out there as you're a patriot if you go destroy it, but all that's going to do is just come back on us. And so the best thing to do would be to sue. At least it will draw more attention to the problem. He won $300,000. The settlements exceeded that amount, over $300,000. So win back that money and get attention drawn to it. It's not going to stop flock cameras, but it's a better way to do it. And actually, when they ended slavery in the UK, it came down to hiding something in a bill that they passed because they couldn't get enough legislators on board in Canada. They call them different there, but legislators on board in Canada to go along with ending of slavery. So they put in a kind of a clause that the result of the clause was the ending of slavery. So more mountains can be moved if you go through the courtroom in some ways, even though the court system, and I'm there with you, trust me, is pretty dead in America. It does not favor the citizenry. But at the same time, we don't have a lot of options, right? So your cities, just like my city of inept, horrifying politicians, all of them, all the way down to city council members. They're the most horrifying people I've ever met. Liars. And they would have all had to agree to put and install these. And so whenever they wave the flag or pretend that there's somebody that cares about you, they always do. They always put on the boots and the cute little outfits and they always pretend that they're American. Okay, well, those guys, whenever they do that, just know that they're doing many things in your community to enslave you. So it's horrifying, but yeah, what do you do? I'm just trying to think of options. Also, I just want to make this clarification because we're talking about the news, right? So Canada and electricity. And so Canada does not provide and it's kind of like the Strait of Hormuz. We get such a low percentage of oil through the strait that it couldn't even really affect us as much as you think. But they pretend that it does because the Iran war keeps trickling along, the gift that keeps on giving. Well, Canada does not supply our electricity. And so they have very tiny footprint and impact. And then you should be even asking about that as well, but why they do. But they exported, they say, electricity to the U.S. in 2025, a very small portion that could affect even like the remotest parts of like New York, New England, Michigan, and upper Midwest, and that's it. So when they're having this huge price spike over Canada, because this is in the news today, it's one of the top headlines, just know that they're lying through their teeth again, and it bears very little on the United States. So we supply way more than 80% of our own electricity. And so this is absolutely asinine and total BS. So just letting you guys know. And then Lake Ontario. So Lake Ontario, Trump was threatening to rename Lake Ontario with Canada in this ongoing spat. The spat is fake. This is fake. It's all fake. They're trying to get the prices hiked through Iran and through spats with Canada so that you don't notice what they're doing. So they're trying to blame it on other countries. They always do. And then what happens is we believe it, hook, line, and sinker. So we're going to rename Lake Ontario. Okay, that is not what's going to happen. Have you ever noticed it's like the renaming of lakes? It's just very weird this last year, but whatever. I had to draw attention to that because I just thought it was so funny. It was just like, really? I mean, come on, really? Anyway, it's going to look like a spat and it's going to feel like a spat, but it's not really a spat. So just know that they have to have scapegoats for raised prices, for exceeding prices when it comes to your electricity, your power, your water, everything. They have to have a reason as to why they're raising this. And it can't be the administration's fault, because the way they've set up our administration, now keep in mind, I'm conservative. They set up the administration so that it's saving us. Well, if we're still combating all these high prices, remember when Biden, King Dingling was in, everyone was complaining about the high prices. And they said, when Trump goes in, we'll get lower prices. Well, obviously that's not happening. So they have to have a reason and a scapegoat because he was set up as the savior. So everyone believes it. It's astonishing. It's insane. Okay. So let's get into some, way meatier stuff because, well, we need to, because it's important. So let's get into some of these things. Okay. So I want to talk about, I want to talk about this ballroom first. Okay. So let's talk about the ballroom expansion, because by now you should probably be pretty aware that they're admitting that it is deep. Okay. That it's way more than 6 levels deep. So remember when it was first started, this project, I came on the show, which is heavily censored for a reason. I came on the show and I said, this is not about the ballroom. They're going to do, they're going to have everyone arguing over the price tag. Okay. Because that gets the left going. Okay. Gets the left going. And the right doesn't care as much about that. And so they were just like, okay, so what? It's weird, but move on. Okay. So that was the fight that was set up, was defend the ballroom or criticize the ballroom and say that he shouldn't be doing a ballroom. It's not about the ballroom. The ballroom it's a total bait and switch. Okay. So what's really down there? So here's something you should probably think about. This is I'm going to get down to the bottom line pretty quickly today because I'm not going to be on the show forever today. So you should be wondering why they're talking about it so much. Whenever they build something like this, they always keep it on the down low, like for years. Okay. Greenbrier, that stayed quiet for a really long time. Mount Weather, they didn't admit to that for a long time. So you have to say to yourself, why are they talking about it so much and admitting that this is all about what they're building underground? Okay. 5 to 6 stories underground, reaching 70 feet high above ground, 250 workers, 20 hours a day, 7 days a week to outrun a court order. Okay. 65% complete this month, 65 to 70% complete. Okay. And what is going to be down there? They're saying a new presidential emergency operations center. See, it was never about a ballroom, military hospital, research facilities. Why? Weird. We already have those things. Why are they underground? A drone port. Now, Trump confirmed this himself, that there's a drone port going in, meeting rooms built to withstand bombs, rockets, missiles, and nuclear blasts. Okay. And a military command center with 6 stories going underground. Okay. So the cost is $600 million to $927 million. It's way more than that, but that's what they're admitting to. Now, this is the story they're putting out. They're actually talking about this. They're saying this. This isn't a secret, okay? And it's not a theory. So don't go calling me a conspiracy theorist. There's no theory behind this. So this is what they're actually admitting to all the time. Then they also said there's a nuclear-proof bunker under the White House, secretly completed under Obama, that can house dozens of people for weeks. That means the entire national security justification. So there's a justified reason. The Supreme Court said keep building for now. Of course they would. They're totally bought. National Trust for Historic Preservation, calling it a historic destruction dressed up as construction. Let me say that again. National Trust for Historic Preservation is calling it a historic destruction dressed up as construction. Now, of course, they lean a little one way. They're going to say something like that. But in Trump's own words, it was the ballroom essentially becomes a shed for what's being built underneath. Now, you can walk away at this point and you can focus on the 6 layers deep, okay? The 6 levels deep. Why are they putting in research facilities? Why are they putting in a military hospital? Why are they doing all that? Because so a normal person would probably go, well, they're doing it for the safety of our government, even though our government has many other shelters that they've built that are way bigger than this. So why this? Why now? And I'm sure you could walk away at this point going, okay, so at least we know that it's layers deep. Because when I first said that, people reached out and they go, no, this is about a ballroom because Trump is bad. And I'm like, listen, honey, this is never about what they say it's about. It's always a decoy. Well, I shouldn't say always a decoy. It's always a bait and switch. Now, there's multiple reasons why something could be a bait and switch, okay, or what the bait and switch actually means. So hang with me for just a second here. So the honest question that I had was, so they've built bunkers for government already and military hospitals. They have all of that underground already. They've been building it for 70 years, or more. So they're using these other cover stories. So why do they need one in this location? Now, here's where it gets interesting for you thinkers out there, okay? So this was my question. Okay, why this particular location? Because all the other locations are not right there, right, in that location. So why this and why now? So we have the Greenbrier, we have Mount Weather, we have Raven Rock, it's hard to say. We have PEOC under the Obama era. And then we have this one. So every bunker was built away from the most surveilled address on earth, okay, is what's supposed to be. So, okay, so this is right underneath. So the entire doctrine of continuity of government is you don't survive by staying at ground zero. You evacuate. It's the whole point of Raven Rock, Mount Weather, and Greenbrier. So why there? Okay, so there's 3 theories. Number 1, it's not primarily a survival bunker at all. It's a command and control, okay? Then number 2 is the existing Obama era bunker had vulnerabilities they don't want to discuss publicly. Okay. Drone warfare, directed energy weapons, whatever. Or it's partially ego, partially legacy, partially power consolidation. I'm going to argue with you at this point that it's made to look like it's about ego and it's made to look like it's about legacy, but it's not those things. Okay. So here's the brutal, honest part that we have to kind of sit with, right? So it gets a little wild from here, okay? So the brutally honest part is about the fact that you've got all of these were done in silence. Greenbrier, Mount Weather, okay, they were all done in quiet, okay? So is the building of this a decoy for something else? And I've been wrestling with that because I think there's kind of an interesting question around all of this, right? So is there a coordinated, simultaneous upgrade of an entire continuity of government infrastructure happening and being done with cover stories, right? So are they all being upgraded simultaneously without us realizing? Could be. Mount Weather, the White House bunker, Cheyenne Mountain, all at once, all in 2025 to 26. The last time this kind of coordinated underground infrastructure thing happened was post 9/11 and in the 50s. So under the fake Cold War. So interesting. So the Boring Company, okay, this is something you're not supposed to kind of realize, but the Boring Company, Elon's Boring Company, because Elon's a front man for the CIA. So the CIA's Boring Company with Elon as the face, is to build 3 tunnels in 3 new cities in 2026. And they beat out all the other applicants, almost 500 applicants. Of course they did. So the government hired the government. The government that won the contract only ever successfully completed like 5 miles of the 68 miles promised in Las Vegas. Okay. So why does a company with a terrible delivery record keep winning these contracts? So because the tunnel technology, the ability to dig fast and do it without public notice, that's the product. So the tunnels themselves could be secondary, but Clark Construction, the same company that that is building the White House bunker, lists this. So pay attention. Confidential client data centers 1 through 6 is on their website. So 6 classified construction jobs, no client names and no locations. It's a little disconcerting, isn't it? So the pattern that no one is really talking about is the public cover story that's technically true, but probably incomplete. The classified price tags, right, if you will, classified scopes of work, and then simultaneous acceleration 2025 to 2026. And so all focus on the ballroom for the wrong reason. What else is going on in America is really the bottom line and what we should be asking. And, you wouldn't talk about a military command going underground at the ballroom site, and let everyone in the world know it if we actually had enemies. So real enemies. So we pretty much have bought everybody. So that tells me that, it's got to almost be a decoy because they're shoring up everything else. If you really had enemies, then you would know that they were going to come and get that first because you just put all your new and shiny in there, right? So everything's new and shiny. So wouldn't that be the place that you'd go after first? So they want the info out there and they're freely talking about it. That should be something that you should be thinking about a lot because something is wrong with this narrative. So that is the first one. And I'm just going to look at the comments really quick. All right. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the information. Kind of crazy. So let me also talk about data centers because there's something there that people aren't asking, and I'm a little surprised as to why. So let me go here. So here's a map of the data centers, and these are all already set up. Okay. Now I was driving. I went to Vegas for a few days, and I was driving home. And I was looking at all the vast land out there, and the feds have consumed and owned unconstitutionally many, many pieces of land are owned by the feds. So you should probably be asking at this point, why are they in cities, these cities everywhere across America, instead of using land they already own in these vast empty spaces where no one could complain, no one would complain. They're just kind of off the beaten path. And I mean, really off the beaten path, like in Nowhereville beaten path. Okay. And so people aren't really asking that. They're complaining about it being in their city, rightfully so, but they're not asking why the location is the location, kind of like the ballroom. It's like, well, why? Well, what's the reason for this? It doesn't even make any sense. So, okay, so this is so crazy. All right, so the urban data centers, okay, so the cover story, I think, is kind of falling apart. I think people are starting to go, this is a little weird. And then, of course, your demonstrators, many of them are paid, but they're always paid to go demonstrate about the wrong issue too. So 97% of the data centers we have are built inside urban areas. So that really doesn't make sense. Okay. Now I know that you're probably saying, what about fiber? What about water? Okay. So it's not a preference. It's not really a coincidence. It just is. Okay. How they're setting this up. So, and they're saying the cloud lives downtown is their comment. Okay. So do they really need fiber connectivity? I mean, you should be asking that, right? You can lay fiber anywhere. And if you're the government, you can print money to pay for it. The Sahara has fiber. So that's not the reason. Okay. So proximity to users. Okay. So this is measured in milliseconds. 50 miles is relevant for 90% of use cases. So it doesn't really hold up because it's all about, well, we have to have the data from people in the near cities. Okay. It's not really holding up though. So power grid access. So then they say, well, we have to have power grid access. So rural federal land has more available grid capacity, and they're literally building new nuclear reactors for this. So that isn't a reason either. So then you have labor pool. Okay. This is another lie. So data centers run lights out. They're completely automated. Or so they say. I don't actually think they're collecting data. They're collecting data now without them everywhere. But okay, so because you don't need a big building to do that. Technology is very small, but data centers run lights out. So it's automated, and so they really hardly need anybody. Okay, so there is no real big labor pool with this. So when your state or your county is promising jobs, it's really a joke because they don't run like that, and they don't want people in there in the community. They don't. They want to hire their own staff. So economic incentives. So they're 2 times more likely to build in energy communities, depressed urban areas with weakened local governance and fewer legal challenges. Okay. So none of the reasons really hold any scrutiny. So what are they actually for? I know you're asking that. I know you're just bursting at the seams. So here we go. There's likely, here's a theory, 3 layers. Okay. Layer 1 is surveillance infrastructure. Okay. So the NSA's Utah data center right here in good old Utah, because we agree to anything the New World Order wants because we're so gullible here, built in 2013, stores every phone record, email, browser history, and keystroke of American citizens. But I think it's held other places too, but they say it's mostly here. Okay. That's confirmed, right? So Snowden, who I actually think was an inside guy, or they would have offed him. He proved it, but I wouldn't trust everything Snowden said. So the Wall Street Journal called it a symbol of the spy agency's surveillance powers. Interesting. But Utah is considered more rural, right? So why are the new ones urban? And they're saying because the next generation isn't just storing data, it's processing it in real time at the population source. So you don't build near people because you need fiber. You build near people because you need low latency access to their data as it's generated, if it's a data center. I do have a lot of questions on whether they're actually doing that there. So the second one is the emerging layer. So command nodes, kind of like the ballroom disguised as commerce. So Mexico City built something called a C414, and they didn't even hide it. It literally stands for Command Control Communications Computers Intelligence. C414, okay? Military C4 star defense system. So it's not a data center, it's a military command and control node, but wearing a data center uniform. So the research paper in Nature Cities, which is kind of a lefty thing, February 2026, described urban underground data centers as distributed urban energy infrastructure with direct connections to district heating, industrial process, and nearby users. So that's not a server farm. That would be a urban control infrastructure. Okay. Now, layer 3, the layer nobody's talking about either. How deep do they go? Are they being built underground, just like the ballroom? Okay. So the ballroom was all about the expansion of the ballroom, but you didn't hear about the underground piece for months, right? Still kept it in the shadows. So Amazon is drilling think about that, Amazon, because That's a whole front company for the government. Amazon is drilling 1,500 feet underwater for water wells beneath a single Missouri campus. Remember how we talked about primary water? It's funny how the government knows that you can dig for water, and they can do that for this. But if you try to talk about it for the people to get water, all of a sudden you're a conspiracy theorist. Amazing. So Norway's mine goes 60 feet below sea level inside a mountain, right? 300 meters long, 14 streets. China's underwater center is at 35 meters. Subsea Cloud is now testing at 3,000 meters. Microsoft's project Natick went 117 feet to the seafloor. So the public availability underground ones, 50 to 200 feet, the ones they don't talk about, right? Hardened command facilities go 200 to 600 feet minimum underground. They say to survive a nuclear overpressure event, but then again, you know how I feel about nukes, the big old nukes that are going to destroy us, the ones they've been guaranteeing that we're going to get for 70 freaking years in the narrative. Okay. Here's the kicker. Mount Weather, the FEMA bunker 60 miles from DC, that's being upgraded right now, and it's classified, and it was started in 2025, and you have to have top clearance required, but they won't say why. So with all of these together, the White House, the underground military command node at Ground Zero, then you have the urban data centers, distributed command and surveillance infrastructure, then you have FEMA bunkers quietly being upgraded while no one's watching, and then you have because it isn't, the data storage problem. Data storage doesn't need to be in the cities. Data storage doesn't need to be in the cities. Data storage doesn't need to be underground. Data storage doesn't need classified contractors with top secret clearance. Okay? Because it's all supposed to be in the machines anyway. Okay? So what does all of those things mean, right? And so command, control, communications, computers, intelligence, and surveillance. C for 1 star. The military already named it. They just forgot to take the sign off the door. So the most expensive infrastructure built in human history, $500 billion, probably more, in 2026 alone, from just Amazon, Google, and Microsoft being embedded inside population centers built underground and connected to government surveillance networks. So just a justified cover story. You're not really watching this tech boom. You're watching the infrastructure of something else get built in plain sight. That's why we say bait and switch, right? It's always a bait and switch. What's the deal with that? So so then you got to ask the question, what about the blueprints? Why aren't counties allowed to see the blueprints if they're saying yes to these monstrosities? Okay. It would make sense that they get to see what they're putting in, right? Oh no. Oh no. So, the Russians seem to have done this. They did that when it was the USSR. They didn't need underground prisons. They had something more elegant, and they invented a fake mental illness called sluggish schizophrenia, diagnosed specifically sluggish schizophrenia. And this was diagnosed specifically in people who questioned the government. So the symptoms were an obsessive desire for justice. Imagine living in the USSR and you are told that you have an obsessive desire for justice. So the need to fight for truth, right? Disagreeing with the media / government, because the media is part of the government. So at least 20,000 documented cases, people were locked up in psychiatric hospitals. I can't even say the name. It's like Pashukas. I don't know. I'm the name murderer. Anyway, so they were run directly by the KGB. So no prisons, no hospitals, because someone calling crazy is just, they're calling them a criminal, but you don't have to have a trial for this because the doctors put their stamp of approval and no one questions it. Because if a doctor says it must be true. So could this happen in America with the data centers? We can't see the blueprints. We don't know really how far they go under. I mean, if you were on to keep people underground, you could do so and no one would ever know. So in 1984, FEMA, yes, that FEMA, they ran a classified exercise called Rex 84, right? And it was a list of 12,000 Americans labeled political security threats. And it was compiled secretly outside FBI jurisdiction. FBI is such a load of men that are just, they'll do anything they're asked to do. It doesn't matter if they inflict harm on citizens. It's just, they drive me crazy. Anyway, mass detention camps, they were being used as using closed, military bases. So they were practicing suspension of the Constitution. They were detaining citizens without congressional debate, without due process, coordinated with CIA, NSA, and all the three-letter alphabet agencies. So Oliver North helped design it. And then it came out during the Iran-Contra hearings. And then Congress got a little uncomfortable and then it got quiet again. So I remember I actually interviewed Oliver North. Anyway, interesting guy. So the ADEX list from Rex 84 directly preceded the no-fly list. They just gave it a different label. Okay. So, could an underground facility be disguised, as a data center, but it's more or less an underground location for hiding dissidents, for putting dissidents away? The checklist: Argentina, CIA black sites, Argentina CCDs. You have the Soviet Pashkas, I don't even know how to say it, Nazi facilities. You have MK Ultra research facilities. You have Nazi research programs. You have Greenbrier, Raven Rock. You have all kinds of these entities that no one ever connects dots to or even talks about. But the NDAA of 2012, signed by Obama, is still active. Remember, I interviewed the old Senator Hatch about this, and Senator Hatch started crumbling up paper so that we couldn't continue our interview. I can't hear you. I'm like, oh, I can hear you just fine. And then he said, when I asked him about the NDAA, he said, oh, Kate, we're not going to actually do anything that's written. It's just written. Seriously, that's how that interview went. I kid you not. 2012. I interviewed Senator Hatch about it on the Fox News affiliate I was on. Anyway, just because it's written doesn't mean we're actually going to apply it. Okay. So this legally allows the indefinite military detention of American citizens. Why do you think they put that into place so long ago? No trial, no lawyer, no timeline, nothing. And I even interviewed somebody that was put away on that and was supposed to receive a medical lobotomy, and a judge actually saved her from it. But I actually interviewed somebody that was detained on this NDAA. So the DSM, the Psychiatric Diagnostic Manual, has been quietly kind of expanding over decades. Now they have a new diagnosis. I've talked about this on the show before. It's called oppositional defiant disorder. So sorry to laugh. It's just that they have to come up with a good name. You're oppositional. So you're defiant. No, I just want the truth. No, you're defiant. So questioning authority is literally listed as a symptom of mental illness. Questioning authority. I kid you not. So, yeah. So the Soviet doctors were talked into this because they didn't think they were evil. They just thought that they were treating people to become better and more peaceful. I'm serious. That really happened. So, all right. So are we connecting dots where dots aren't? I don't think so. Because every single regime that built detention infrastructure called it something else. Let me tell you, Germany called it public health. The USSR called it psychiatric care. The US called it continuity of government. Argentina called it national reorganization. It means people without a trial are put away and no one questions it because they don't believe the government. The liars in government, right? So they built the infrastructure first, then they waited for the right emergency, real or manufactured, mostly manufactured, to flip the switch. So the question isn't, could this happen? The question is, how are you thinking about this? What are you doing with this info? Because they can always get people like the doctors on board to say these people who really need care, they're delusional. And most doctors and teachers in America are pretty liberal. They'll kind of go along. They'll kind of go along and not ask questions, many of them. So they'll believe that people on the right that are questioning more have a psychological problem because they've been setting it up, right? You're a conspiracy theorist, right? Or remember January 6th, they set this up as like, look, see how people go crazy and they get violent. Even though that wasn't the case, it was mostly all feds doing that, which got found out later. So January 6th was like a setup of, I think, what comes in the future. And that is, they've set this sort of train in motion that explains that how people are. And even though that was manufactured event by the feds, it was still there to point to, see, this is what happens if they don't trust government and they don't get their way, then they're the enemy, basically. So, yeah. So you're not allowed to see the blueprints of these. You don't know how deep they go. They're not built on vast, empty rural land as they should be, right? Because isn't it easier to get it put on vast, empty rural land than it would be to get a county and the citizens all on board, right? So they seem to be picking places where they'd have the most problems. Isn't that interesting? So, yeah. Interesting stuff. They don't have them on rural lands. We have drive around America. Most of America is vast and empty. You know, the I-15 from Vegas all through Utah and through California is mostly nothing. 80% of nothing out there. Okay. And then you come up into little clusters of cities, but mostly nothing. So here it is. They empty rural lands. Here's a comment. Don't have infrastructure. Actually, the infrastructure needed, they do have. I just went through that. They do have it. But they're doing it in areas where it's populated for a reason. So they have to be for something else. That's what that says to me. And I've had that feeling since the very beginning, that they are for a completely different reason than what we're being told. Now, I went through a whole show where I did the last 50 years, okay, of places being built like Mount Weather and Greenbrier, where we were told it was something completely different. Even the Manhattan Project was a completely different reason at the time. If you go back, I have a newspaper archive, goes back a long time. So I can go back and I can prove that they were selling it as something totally different to the people at the time. But see, we don't have good memories. We don't talk about this stuff. So people don't realize that it was sold as something different. Okay. Then years later, we find out what they were actually doing there. So data centers, yeah. So somebody's coming in with a comment that said data centers are energy suckers. I'm so sorry. That's a lie. That's a lie. The water is a lie and the usage is a lie. Why am I saying that? Because right now in the press, you can go look. I can pull up I have a gazillion articles all tabbed, ready to go. I can throw up there, but what they're trying to do is say, just like this whole Canada lie that Canada's going to affect our utilities, okay? Everything that they're saying in the way of water, okay, and the way of electricity is a lie, because they have to have a reason for the prices going up to the people. It sounds reasonable. Oh yeah, it's sucking water. Oh yeah, it's sucking electricity. So, Larry Fink, right, at the last Davos got up and said, and I've mentioned this before on the show, got up and said, citizens are now secondary users. Data centers get all the water and electricity. but it's actually not true. It's just that on paper, it's true. So that the American people believe that the data centers are getting it. It's a huge freaking lie. They are going to up the cost and create shortages based on that lie. Why? Because it's believable. You believe it. Everyone believes it. And so how they set up the paid for protesting. There's a lot of paid for protesting. There's honest people showing up and being angry about this, as they should, because the whole thing is taking away our constitutional God-given right to privacy. So no one's really fighting it on that, though, which is really the larger right premise. They're just fighting it on they're loud, they're noisy, and they're taking our water. They don't need culinary water. So somebody's on here going, yeah, server rooms run hot. This I know. They might run hot, but they don't need the water they're telling you they need. Okay. And they don't need culinary clean water. So it's ridiculous. It's a lie. It's all lies. It's a pack of lies to get you to believe that you have to pay 3 times the amount for utilities and 3 times the amount for water, which is going to put people in a situation where, could you buy a house? Yes. Could you afford to live there? Probably not, unless you move people into your home or you combine family members or you maybe just rent. So in a society where we're told that you're going to own less stuff or nothing at all, it would make sense in the trajectory where we're going. Does that make sense? Where we're going is you own nothing, but you're happy. You're not really happy. You've given up at that point because you don't own anything. Okay. And that's how people in this nation could actually build a life for themselves, was that they owned property and they could leverage it to start a business or what have you. So you take away that, you take away everything from people. So the cost of living that they want to achieve has to get there for a reason. Well, when Larry Fink said that at Davos, then it made sense, because it was like, oh, so they're officially declaring that American citizens are secondary users. So we get the leftover. We get the scant leftover. Nothing left, honey. That's it. That you get what's left. Now cities, you parcel that out. And so you think the cost is going to rise? Of course it is, but it's built on a lie. It's built on a lie. That I know. So I'm awfully cheery today. Sorry about all this info. But sometimes you just got to do kind of a cut to the chase show. So, all right. So the data centers, look around. They're not using federal land. That would be a lot easier for them to just place them there. They don't have to go get permission from the cities. They have to have them in the cities. They have to have them in the cities to explain the lie that they're about to tell. And that is that the cost is so high that it's going to affect all of us, and that we can't afford to live. And you definitely can't afford to live on a Social Security income and pay your ever high electricity and water. One of the goals, this was predicted in '69. One of the goals for the future is to have people living together. And it isn't because they want people to become friends. It's because they want people to have to get to a point where they can't afford to live. So they bring somebody into their home, and then you tell on each other. So you tell on each other, you report each other, and it's highly uncomfortable, and you still don't own it. That's one of the goals in the future from 1969. I believe it, because everything else it talked about in that 1969 proclamation has been coming true as well. So gotta at some point go, yeah, it's probably what they're doing. But you can't get from A to Z without some sort of explanation to the American people that's going to sound okay. And there's a lot of gullible people that are going to believe that it's hogging all the water, it's hogging all the electricity, and it's hogging everything. So then they don't fight this as well, because they think that that's exactly just how it's coming down. And that's just not true. It's kind of like Iran. In March, I told you that Iran would trickle on forever. Why? Because it wasn't going to come to a close. And everyone I had on the show disagreed with me and said, yes, it's coming to a close. or they're going to drop a nuke on us, which made me laugh. So they've been threatening that for 40 years. So it wasn't about that. See, we own Iran's government. So it's easy to keep Iran kind of in the hole as we keep dragging this narrative along that we're coming to some sort of consensus in 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, and 2 months, in 2 months, in 2 months, in 2 months. Okay. We're going to finally get to some sort of goal, right, with Iran, even though we went in there unprovoked. There was a reason, and we just can't understand it. And they can't tell us. But the reason was, and I said at the time, I go, the reason was a lie. It was a scapegoat to get our oil prices high, our food cost high, everything's high because everything runs on oil. So the transportation of everything, all right. So people have to charge a lot more because of the Strait of Hormuz and the oil war that was unprovoked that we launched into for no apparent reason whatsoever, other than if you knew what we knew. I'm like, sure. Anyway, so that whole thing came up and Iran is complicit. They're not doing anything really. All we ever get is hearsay on what they're saying, okay? Because we own the government. We own their government. We have since 1953. The CIA has owned their government since 1953. They put in Khomeini. They put in the Shah. You don't think they still own it? You're a fool. So they're complicit, going along, not threatening anything, not really doing anything. And now we're sitting at the end of August. Now, this has been going on since March, and I got told I was off my freaking rocker for thinking that it wouldn't come to a close. I knew it wouldn't come to a close because there had to be a reason that they can explain the high prices. Now, go look at the media if you want to test me. Go look at the media and look at the AP headlines, okay? The AP headlines make it look like we get all our oil from the Strait of Hormuz. And we're in the low percentage of the Strait of Hormuz oil, okay? So there's no way. And then they tried to paint the UK as getting, or Europe as getting it through the Strait, which they haven't since like 2020, 2021. So it's an excuse, it's a catalyst, it's a reason. And we don't get that. We don't understand it. We don't want to understand it because then you don't blame our administration. You just blame, right? You just blame Iran. It's just such an easy thing to do. So, and yes, on Iran, you can't be the CIA intelligence and own it in 1953 and put Khomeini in, who was living as an agent over in Italy, and then they took him out and put him in as the reigning king of Iran, whatever you want to call him, the Shah. You can't put him in and do that in 1973 and now in 2026 claim that we lost control somehow. You do realize that the headlines, okay, the headlines have painted Iran, and I played a clip from the beginning with Netanyahu talking about how they were this close to a nuke, this close. And he's been saying that for 35 years. So 35 years later, still believe it? Still believe that they're this close? Yeah. So we could squash Iran like a bug if they were a true enemy. They're not. We use them as a catalyst. And in this narrative, we're using them as a catalyst of the enemy. So that we can get away with charging higher prices without it coming down on morale for not getting saved through the presidency. All the presidencies are put in. They are not elected. They are selected. And this conservative is the first to tell you that, because most people won't on our conservative side. They won't say that because we have to kind of, defend the savior story. Well, I don't believe it and won't believe it. So less than 10% of our oil comes from the Strait. That is true. That is very, very true. Appreciate the comments coming in. All right. So let's go to some more truth, shall we? Now, who do you think is going to be the next president of the United States? I wonder who. So in 2022, I successfully told you and was told off by pretty much every guest I had on the show for 2.5 years that I was insane for saying Trump was going in. And I said that in 2022. And actually, my numbers dropped in our conservative ring because how dare I say that he was going to be selected, because of course the deep state was after him, and that we were and that he was not going to come in. So every guest told me he has 4 lawsuits against him. He will never be in. Now, I've talked about that endlessly on the show because of the fact that I knew he was going in. I would have bet my house on it. I knew he was going in to be president because they were already telling us that he was going to be in 2020. Really 2022 was the start of that. The headlines were starting to kind of tell us who the matchup was going to be and who was going to win. And they wanted certain things to happen. So they wanted the digital ID apparatus and tech apparatus and AI to come in without too many people questioning it. And they wanted us to be complacent. The other reason was to amplify war, which we've done. We went into an unprovoked war with Iran, and most Americans are not, on the conservative side, are not questioning that. They're thinking, well, maybe we had to. Okay, we didn't, but maybe we had to. Okay. So when you look at the next president of the United States, the people that are actually running the show, and it is not the presidency of the United States, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, they don't care which side it is. They just care about what's coming next, what they have to build, what they have to do, and then what side is going to make us more complacent to it. So, first of all, in order to become president, and believe me, when I'm even talking about this, I know that it's just theater. I get it. It's just theater. But there's so many people out there that are so consumed with this. And Glenn Beck put up this meme, or this not meme, post that said, will it be Rubio or Vance? Which one will save us next? You know, basically. Okay, so I was like, what? I used to do a show for the Blaze. Anyway, okay. Lots of pushers of the narrative. So I'll say that. So they care about predictability. They care about controllability. So a controlled Democrat or a controlled Republican in the same product, different packaging. So basically, the next president will be whoever the financial class. So Whitney Webb, I played a clip of her coming in, and it talked about the bankers. It's more than the bankers. She always talks about the bankers, but a lot of leftists do, you know. It's always about the bankers. It's like, no, it actually goes farther than that. So they always get that wrong, that piece wrong. The financial class, the media consolidators, the intelligence think tanks, okay? And so they have to agree on the best bet for maintaining the current power structure, making the people feel like they chose. Like we used to say, you know, how's the weather at home? Like, is everything okay? Is everybody okay? You know, like not mentally, but attitude wise and everything else. So they get a good consensus of where America's at. And they have to determine what America will buy as the winner. Why do I say that? Because they control the elections in the software, which is much easier than ballot stuffing from 2004, which was a product of the hanging Chad lie of 2000. To bring on the software of 2004. Okay, they had to have a reason to bring that on. So they made up a lie. So J.D. Vance has the inside track on the right. He has the base, and he has teal money. He has the Yale credentials. Okay, he is the reformed outsider narrative. Ron Howard even made a movie about him. He's changed his name 4 times, but we're not supposed to look at that. And we're supposed to just think that he is Mr. Military CIA guy, but he's a good guy, and that he is just that Ron Howard makes a movie about his life, but he's not part of the club. Okay. So, yeah. So one of the tells of the presidency happens usually right before that the major candidacy thing goes on. And so next year they'll have a Bilderberg meeting, and you need to watch who is coming out of that Bilderberg meeting. Now, before Trump became president, Trump didn't they say Trump didn't go to the meeting. There are some reports that he did, but that it wasn't written. Okay. So whatever you want to believe. But guess who was at that meeting and it was written down was Peter Thiel. And Peter Thiel and JD Vance are this. So Peter Thiel was probably negotiating a JD Vance deal. But it is 70-year kind of documented pattern about who gets invited to the Bilderberg. And that usually tells you what the next regime looks like, whether it's left or right. Now, I know a lot of you are still in the, I hate Trump. Trump's a devil. Okay, it's not about Trump. If you're new to the show, gosh, if you still think it's about Trump, you're not awake at all. You are not awake. You're not awake. It isn't about Trump. You're supposed to be arguing over Trump. It's not about that. Watch the casting call. Watch who goes to Bilderberg. Okay. So they're promoting Marco Rubio and they're promoting JD Vance. Now, Trump came out and he said something kind of interesting. He said, if this thing goes south about Iran, I'll blame JD. Now, JD's little nod to the establishment would be to stay silent and take that bullet. Okay. So he'll do it because he's wanting to prove himself as the next person coming in. And they'll look at that. But you have to kind of look at this, like who goes on Joe Rogan in July, just a month ago? Vance himself. Okay. Basically confirmed Epstein was Mossad or CIA or both, and then just said we won't have those documents. And you know, there's just, when you're on Joe Rogan, there's going to be a reason. I know a lot of people think Joe's probably the real deal, but no one with an audience over 1 million, and I've told you this many, many times, is the real deal. Okay. RFK Jr. literally called Vance's nomination a salute to the CIA and military industrial complex. That's true. Vance co-founded Palantir. So no wonder Peter Thiel was there at Bilderberg. So you can always kind of tell by who's in that room, who's going to be the next one. So will they keep going with Republican if you want to look at sides? Well, you shouldn't be, but if you wanted to look at sides, yes, because that means that we'll go into a full war cycle, full war. Digital ID normalization will come about. They'll continue on. And these are big hills, big hills for the deep state to die on. So they want to keep up that continuity. So if I was to predict, because remember, Rubio stayed silent during the Iran thing, which was kind of weird, but they're kind of setting him up as VP and JD Vance as president. So it would be right now, I would probably lean toward that duo becoming president and vice president because of the complacency that they'll bring about. So, yeah. And I know that's really hard for people to grasp, I think, still. But we have wartime surveillance, we have wartime compliance, we have wartime economy, we have wartime identity infrastructures, and there's no coincidence there. We have the digital ID connection. It's a rollout, and that rollout is going to stay being rolled out. So the timing of what would appear to be a Democrat in office, even though the same people are running the show behind the scenes, no matter who's in, but it would shift that dramatically. So it would make people kind of get up and get a little bit more like, hey, what's going on? And more interested in finding out the truth. So if they can keep everybody complacent, I would say they would move along with Republicans going in again in 2028, right? 2028. So there's that. And so what would come next? Well, we had step one, real ID enforcement, began in May 2025. Not really being like majorly implemented for a couple of years, but still started in May. Then we had Apple Digital ID launched in November 2025. So convenient. It's in your wallet. Yeah. And then we had 70% of Americans in the MDL programs by mid of this year. So, and then TSA already accepts digital IDs at 250 plus airports, and then $45 fee if you're not compliant, financial, penalty for opting out, whatever. But we have still, we have banking access tied to digital ID compliance, healthcare access tied to compliance, and eventually social credit adjacent scoring. All that's coming. I don't think they're going to want to rock the boat. So I think that they're going to go ahead and put in the team that's going to give them the least resistance. Yeah, that's what I think. So there we are. I was also going to talk about GP, the GPL shots of the Ozempic, mysteriously kind of came out of Hollywood and into the time when we were getting the COVID shots. I will talk about that probably Thursday, right after Dr. Avery Jackson comes on. I'll talk about that just a little bit, but I wanted to kind of give you more context with the data centers and with the ballroom. And there's always a bait and switch. They've been doing this for so long. And we still don't get the memo. So we have to be able to look at everything with a wiser mindset, because we're just the stupidest people on earth. It's horrible. And, all these people that I'm showing on this graphic on YouTube, I'm showing the possible candidates for president, right? From Kristi Noem to Ron DeSantis to Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, Doug Burgum, Tim Scott, Elise Stefanik, Byron Donalds, Glenn Youngkin, Vivek again. We're going to get Vivek again, even though he's completely woke. All these people, they're not that much different. They're not that much different. I know they can appear to be, they're not. They're all they're all on board doing whatever they're told to do. And that's why they're all vetted to be in the races. That's why that's going to happen, is because you're just going to see a whole bunch of people that profess to love America, but when it comes right down to it, they're going to do whatever they're told. Here's a comment. Marco has been brilliant. No, he's not. Marco's so bought. Are you kidding me? Marco has a lot of secrets, kind of like Lindsey Graham. Yeah, that's not true. It's not true. He's not. He's just an easy pawn. Marco Rubio has always been sort of like the little bat boy. And I'm a conservative saying this. I'm a conservative. And these guys are not. None of these people are actually conservative. You know that, right? It's all a lie. I mean, you know me. I look at the left. I just, the ignorance, the arrogance, and the ignorance is insane. I'm not a fan at all of the lefties. I can't even hardly talk to them. I can talk to people on the right. It's easier for me, but still the gullibility is tough. And everyone wants a savior because they want it to be easy. It's not easy. It never will be. And it's up to us, the people. We have a chance if we can see all of it for what it is instead of just going along with whatever they tell us. So lots of lies going on. We really, really need to understand and what's happening here. And yeah, Vivek was really deep into pharma. I'm getting a comment. Yeah, really deep into pharma. All these guys are. You can't get close to the White House. You can't get close to a congressional seat, a Senate seat, the presidency, or the Supreme Court without being on board. Can't happen. It won't happen. You'll be rooted out just like that. If you're a person who loves the Constitution, you're gone. You're not part of their game plan. And the right and the left pick the candidates through the election fraud. So they pick their racehorses through the election fraud. And we're supposed to be told that we choose, and we do not choose in America. It's the biggest banana republic without actually being labeled that I can think of. So there you go. All right. I will see you here tomorrow, and I'll do some more of this kind of thing on Thursday. So we'll go a little deeper because there are some things you need to understand about the health department and Mounjaro and Ozempic and all of that, and the COVID shots and what was in them. There's a lot more there to discuss, and so I'll discuss it. And so appreciate you guys. Thank you for that. And of course, go to cardiomiracle.com/Kate. Remember when I told you I took blood work? I do blood work every summer, and my blood work, after using it for a year, my blood work came back with no flags, like no high numbers. Like, I mean, always has high numbers on some things, right? And the stress that even the show has done to my body, but this year, surprisingly, but not surprisingly, Cardio Miracle was the only thing I really changed, and I take it twice a day. So there you go. Cardiomiracle.com really is a miracle. Cardiomiracle.com/Kate. You'll get a little discount. And then, of course, go and get the ebooks at katetalks.myshopify.com. Cancer ebook, how to deal with cancer. It's all the cliff notes. All the cliff notes. Somebody in your family gets cancer, and I'm going to assume there is somebody, because it's 1 in 2 gets cancer now in their lifetime. So it's pretty bad, and bad for a reason. These are the things that work, and then it shows you what doesn't work. Okay, so don't fall for snake oils, but these things work, and it's really good. And it's after 16 years on the air, and people were telling me to kick this information out to you, and I did. So, and it supports the show. It supports further research. So go get it. It's on cancer, tackling cancer naturally, and then also the AI bait and switch that comes after the job loss that people do not understand, that's coming down the pike, and it's much bigger than just job loss. Much bigger. It's so much bigger. Please try to understand why they're doing AI right now and where it's going. It's a big, big deal that you understand this. That book is there. And of course, Bridging the Gap, how to get along in politics, how to get along with somebody that does not think the way you do. And also the truth about organ donation, what brain death really means, and how they conjured up the term. And it's bad. Get your name off your license, please. Let your family decide in the moment, but don't put it on your license. You're creating your own problems, and problems for your family. Also, there's a reason that they present it to people that are 16. new drivers, okay? Because they want you to sign on the dotted line for that. And then also, gosh, there's so many ebooks. I can't think off the top of my head, but anyway, they're all there. katetalks.myshopify.com for those. And I really, really appreciate your support. And we might lose this forum at the end of next month, and that'll just make me sad, because there's no place to just talk about truth anymore. No place. The right and the left, all bought. Yeah, it's very tough out there. Very, very tough. But I so appreciate you guys in tuning in. So thank you for that. And of course, let me play some music for you. Be faithful, be fearless. Find out why I say that. Go to katedalleyradio.com. Over 28 million listens. That's a lot of listens. Super appreciate you. And be back tomorrow with Melissa. Thanks, you guys. And you can email me, kate@katedalleyradio.com. Go get the ebook, support the show. Donate to the show right up from the website. Thank you so much.